Will typed to his mom, "Tell your husband I don't want those people in my house." Bate looked over at Todd. "Todd, what did you do?" Todd sighed. "Will told us half the story back at the group home. Two of the other residents, Sam and Jeffrey, told me what they saw." He turned toward Will. "Come on, Will, go to your room so I can change you before they get here." Will rolled his eyes hard, his frustration obvious. He typed quickly and shoved the screen toward them. "What the fuck?" The room went quiet for a second. Bates stared at the words on the device, then back at Todd. "Before who gets here?" Will's hands tightened on his chair controls, already angry that decisions were being made around him instead of with him. Todd rubbed the back of his neck. "People who need answers." Will let out a bitter laugh and typed again. "No my house my life, maybe ask me first." Todd grabbed a pull-up from the hallway closet and held it against his side. "Will, let's go, they'll be here any minute." Will looked at the pull-up, then up at Todd with instant irritation burning across his face. He typed hard on his device. "Then let them wait." Bates stepped forward carefully. "Will, Will cut his eyes toward her and kept typing. "You invite people here without asking me, now you want to rush me because you messed up." Todd's jaw tightened, trying to stay calm. "This isn't the time to fight me on everything." Will gave a sarcastic laugh under his breath and typed again. "Funny, because nobody asked if it was time to drag my business to strangers either." The tension in the room thickened. Todd lowered his voice. "I'm trying to help you." Will immediately typed back. "No, you're trying to control me before they hear my side." For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the soft hum of Will's wheelchair and the distant noise of a car door outside. Bate looked toward the window. "Todd." Todd exhaled slowly. "They're here." Will spun his wheelchair around sharply and headed down the hallway toward his room without another word. Todd watched him disappear down the hall before turning back toward Bate, still holding the pull-up in one hand. A knock echoed through the house. Todd muttered under his breath, already stressed. "Tell them we'll see them in a sec." Bate nodded nervously and walked to the front door. When she cracked it open, she forced a small smile. "Hi, sorry, things are a little tense right now, we'll be out in a second." Outside, voices murmured politely, but the pressure in the house only got heavier. Down the hallway, a drawer slammed in Will's room. Todd closed his eyes for a moment. "This is gonna be a disaster." Sam lowered his voice as they stood outside the house. "Jeffrey, Ben, this may be a bad idea." Ben looked over at him. "Todd invited us." "Yeah, Todd did," Sam said carefully, "but I think we'll just found out." Jeffrey frowned. "Why are you thinking that?" Sam shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "John and Alan told me at the last minute, and his wife did what Liam used to do." Ben looked confused. "What do you mean?" Sam stared toward the house for a second before answering. The fake calm voice, rushing around, acting nice because company's coming. Jeffrey's expression changed immediately. Sam continued quietly. "I've seen the signs before." For a moment nobody spoke. Inside the house, muffled arguing could still be heard through the door. Jeffrey looked toward Ben. "Maybe we should leave." But before Ben could answer, the front door opened a little wider and Bates stepped back out, trying to smile despite the obvious tension inside. "Sorry about the wait." Will's voice came out choppy and strained as Todd helped position him. "5 minutes, Dad, that's all I'll give them." Todd carefully placed the AAC device onto Will's tray and adjusted it so he could reach it easier. "Okay," Todd said quietly, "but they just want to help you." Will immediately started typing. "People always say that." Todd looked down at the words, his expression tightening. "This is different." Will gave him a long stare before typing again. "That's what everybody says before they decide what's best for me." The sentence hit harder than Todd expected. For a second, he didn't know what to say. Out in the living room, muffled voices and nervous small talk drifted through the hallway while everyone waited for Will to come out. Will rolled out into the dining room, his chair stopping near the table. His little brother Henry was sitting there eating, clearly confused by the tense atmosphere in the house. Will quickly typed onto his AAC device. "Henry, give us the room with these people." Henry looked up from his plate, annoyed. "I just sat down to eat." Bate answered immediately, her voice tense. Eat in your room. Henry threw his hands up a little. Fine. He grabbed his plate and drink, muttering under his breath as he walked past the visitors toward the hallway. As he disappeared into his room, the silence in the dining room became painfully awkward. Will looked around at everyone gathered there, Sam, Jeffrey, Ben, Todd, and Bate, then typed slowly. Okay, you wanted this meeting, talk. Sam raised his hand slightly, trying to keep the situation calm. We just wanted to check on you. Will let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Then he started typing hard enough that the keys on the AAC device clicked loudly through the room. Welfare check now, why not in the group home? Everyone stayed silent as the next sentence appeared. I'm homed. Will's breathing was uneven now, anger and hurt mixing together. He kept typing. So get out of my fucking house. The room froze. Then one more line appeared on the screen. And fuck you too, Dad, for inviting them. Bate immediately looked at Todd. Jeffrey lowered his eyes awkwardly while Ben shifted uncomfortably near the doorway. Sam, though, didn't look angry. He just looked sad. Todd swallowed hard. We'll cut him off by hitting the button on the device again. No. The robotic voice echoed through the dining room louder than anyone expected. Sam's voice stayed steady but frustrated. We tried in the group home, they just put us in bed if we try to help. Will's eyes flashed and his hands moved fast over the AAC device. So what you're telling me is that you and Jeffrey are pusses. Bate immediately stepped in, shocked. Willem, language. Will didn't back down, he typed again, sharper this time. It's the truth, Mom, he just said it. The room tightened instantly. Jeffrey looked hurt now, glancing away instead of responding. Ben shifted his weight awkwardly near the doorway. Sam raised a hand slightly. That's not what I meant, Will. Todd exhaled through his nose, trying to keep control of the situation. Everyone needs to slow down here. Will's grip tightened on his chair controls, his anger still high, but underneath it there was something more tense, like he felt cornered and wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Bate softened her voice. Will, nobody's here to fight you. But the room still didn't feel calm. It felt one step away from breaking completely. Will's hands moved faster now, the frustration and embarrassment spilling out in the words on his AAC screen. That day I couldn't tell anyone I needed the toilet because I didn't have my device. He paused, then continued typing, slower but heavier. I went on myself, and after that he put me in a diaper. The room went still. Will's gaze lifted, eyes tight with emotion. Why would I want to relive the embarrassment? His chair shifted slightly as he looked around at all of them. You two can talk, but you guys said nothing then. A beat. His next message came sharper. So again, go now. Bate's face fell, her voice softening. Will, Todd didn't interrupt immediately this time. He looked genuinely shaken, like the weight of what Will was describing had landed harder than anything else in the argument. Jeffrey stood awkwardly near the doorway, unsure whether to leave or stay. Sam looked down, jaw tight, not defensive anymore, just regretful. The room wasn't angry now. It was uncomfortable, quiet, and heavy with something nobody had handled well. Todd spoke quietly, his tone softer now. They feel bad. Will's response came quickly on the AAC device. Good. The room stayed tense, but nobody interrupted him anymore. Will kept typing, slower this time, like he was forcing himself to get it out. In the room, the guy took out my underwear. He paused, then finished the thought. And put diapers in the drawer inside. A heavy silence followed. Bates' face tightened with discomfort and concern. Todd looked down, clearly processing what he was hearing. Jeffrey and Ben stayed still, no longer trying to defend anything, just listening. Sam finally spoke, quieter than before. Will, I didn't know it went down like that. Will didn't answer right away, his hands hovered over the device. The anger from earlier was still there. But now it was mixed with something more exhausted, like he was done explaining and didn't trust the room to understand it fully. Todd stepped in gently. Nobody here is saying that was okay. Bate nodded slowly. It shouldn't have happened like that. The room stayed quiet again, no more arguing, just the weight of what had finally been said out loud. Will's hands slowed as he typed, the frustration turning into something more vulnerable. That one independence in 1 second, gone. He paused, then continued. I need help with everything else. A beat. I need help to use the bathroom. I know it's hard to explain. The room went very quiet. No one interrupted him this time. Bates' expression softened immediately, her posture shifting from defensive to concerned. Todd looked down and nodded slightly, like he was trying to fully understand without rushing to respond. Jeffrey and Ben stayed still, both clearly realizing this wasn't just an argument anymore. Sam finally spoke carefully. Okay, then we should have supported you properly, not handled it like that. Todd exhaled slowly. We need to do this the right way going forward, with your device, with privacy, with respect. Bates stepped a little closer but kept her voice gentle. Will, thank you for telling us, we hear you. The tension in the room didn't disappear completely, but it shifted, less like a confrontation and more like everyone finally understanding they'd crossed a line and needed to fix how things were being handled. Will's hands slowed as he typed, the frustration turning into something more vulnerable. That one independence in 1 second, gone. He paused, then continued. I need help with everything else. A beat. I need help to use the bathroom. I know it's hard to explain. The room went very quiet. No one interrupted him this time. Bates' expression softened immediately, her posture shifting from defensive to concerned. Todd looked down and nodded slightly, like he was trying to fully understand without rushing to respond. Jeffrey and Ben stayed still, both clearly realizing this wasn't just an argument anymore. Sam finally spoke carefully. Okay, then we should have supported you properly, not handled it like that. Todd exhaled slowly. We need to do this the right way going forward, with your device, with privacy, with respect. Bates stepped a little closer but kept her voice gentle. Will, thank you for telling us, we hear you. The tension in the room didn't disappear completely, but it shifted, less like a confrontation and more like everyone finally understanding they'd crossed a line and needed to fix how things were being handled. Will's fingers slowed on the AAC device, then he looked up, his voice coming out choppy and uneven. You guys tried to help me. Sam nodded right away. Yeah. A pause settled over the room, but it wasn't as heavy as before. Will swallowed, then spoke again with effort. Thank you guys. For a moment, nobody rushed in with explanations or arguments. Bates' shoulders relaxed a little and Todd gave a small nod, like he finally felt the situation had reached a calmer place. Sam answered gently. We just want you safe, Will. Jeffrey added quietly. And actually heard. The room stayed quiet, but the tone had shifted, less confrontation, more understanding, even if everything that happened still needed to be sorted out properly. Will's hands slowed as he typed, the frustration turning into something quieter, more tired than angry. At the time I felt so isolated. He paused, then continued. The nurse was mean to me so much. Another pause. The only time I had my device was when speech came in, and for 5 minutes I used it, then they put it away. The room had gone completely still again. Ben frowned slightly. So speech therapy knew. Will's answer came quickly. Yes, it wasn't just me. That last line hung in the air heavier than the rest. No one jumped in right away this time, not Todd, not Bate, not Sam, even Jeffrey stayed quiet. Todd finally spoke carefully. Will, that shouldn't have happened like that at all. Bate nodded slowly. You should have had consistent access to your device, that's basic communication support. Sam looked uncomfortable but honest. I believe you. The energy in the room shifted again, not toward arguing this time, but toward the realization that what Will was describing wasn't just one bad moment, but a pattern that had affected how he could communicate and be heard. Jeffrey nodded quietly. Yeah, we saw it. Sam leaned forward slightly, voice low and serious. They put us into groups, non-speakers and speakers. A beat of silence followed that. Will looked at them for a moment, still holding his AAC device, then typed slowly, as if the words were heavier now that someone else confirmed it. So you saw it too. Jeffrey answered first. Not everything, but enough to know it wasn't right. Sam added more carefully. It felt like people were getting sorted instead of supported. Todd stood a little back from the group, absorbing it all. His expression was tight, less defensive now, more like he was trying to understand the full picture without interrupting it. Bates spoke softly. That's not how care should work. Will's hands hovered over the device again, but he didn't type right away. The room had shifted again, less confrontation, more shared recognition that what they were describing wasn't just one isolated incident, but a system that had failed to support him properly. Todd nodded slowly. Like Group A and Group B thing. Sam exhaled. Yes, like that. He shifted in his chair, voice quieter now. When I was mute for 2 days, they moved me to Group B for those 2 days. The room went still again. Will looked at Sam for a moment, then typed slowly on his AAC device. So when I couldn't talk, I got moved too. Sam nodded once. Yeah. Jeffrey added, uneasy but honest. It felt like you got labeled instead of helped. Bates' face tightened but her voice stayed calm. That kind of system can be really harmful if it's used like that. Todd rubbed his forehead slightly, thinking. It shouldn't be about ranking people, it should be about what support they need. Will didn't respond right away, his hands rested on the device. The room had shifted again, less anger now, more realization that the way things were structured had affected all of them in different ways, not just Will alone. Will's hands hovered over the AAC device, then pressed down harder than before. Can we please stop? The words appeared on the screen and echoed the tension that had been building for a long time. Will's shoulders shook. He stopped typing. Then he started to cry. Not loud at first, just the kind of sobbing that comes after holding too much in for too long. The room went completely quiet. No one spoke over him this time. Bates' expression softened immediately, and she took a careful step forward but didn't rush him. Todd stayed where he was, his face tight with concern. Sam looked down, clearly realizing the conversation had gone too far for one moment. Jeffrey shifted uncomfortably, guilt written across his face. Ben stayed near the doorway, silent. After a few seconds, Bates spoke gently. Okay, we stop. Todd nodded once. We can pause this. There was no more arguing now, just the weight of everything that had been said and Will finally breaking through the pressure of it all. Sam spoke softly, keeping his distance but making sure his voice stayed steady. Will, you don't not want to see us because you don't like us, but because of the trauma. Will, still crying, managed a small nod. Yeah. His sobs didn't stop. His grip stayed loosely on the AAC device, but he wasn't typing anymore. The room stayed quiet for a moment, no one trying to fill the space too quickly. Bate moved a little closer to Todd, both of them watching Will carefully. Sam's voice stayed gentle. Okay, then we should have been more careful about how we came in today. Jeffrey lowered his head slightly. We didn't mean to push you like this. Todd exhaled slowly. We can step back, give you space. No one argued anymore. The energy in the room had fully shifted now, from confrontation to restraint, with everyone finally realizing that pushing further wasn't helping. Will's crying continued, but the pressure around him finally eased as the room stopped advancing and simply let him be. Bate gently placed the AAC device back within Will's reach, staying close but not crowding him. Will's breathing was still uneven, but his hands found the device again. He typed slowly, more controlled than before. Jeffrey, Sam, I know you couldn't say anything. A pause. It was just easy to blame you too. He hesitated, then continued. But I'm mad at the staff. Another beat. You guys were in the very same situation I was in. The room stayed quiet after that, different now, less tense, more reflective. Sam nodded slightly, voice low. Yeah, we were. Jeffrey added. Quietly. We didn't have much power either. Bate looked between them, her tone careful. That's what makes this so complicated. Nobody in that system was really being supported the right way. Todd exhaled, looking tired but calmer. But we're here now, and we need to make sure nothing like that happens again. No one rushed Will anymore. The focus had shifted from conflict to understanding, with space finally opening up for him to breathe. Ben shifted near the doorway, looking uncertain. I called the home and the line's not working. Todd immediately straightened a little. What do you mean not working? Ben checked his phone again. It just keeps cutting off, like it's disconnected or going straight to voicemail, but no one picks up. Bate frowned. That's not normal. Sam looked toward Will briefly, then back at the adults. Could be staffing change, or they're avoiding calls because of today. Jeffrey added quietly. Or something going on there. The room got tense again, but in a different way than before, less emotional, more concerned. Todd rubbed his forehead. Okay, we're not guessing, I'll try calling from my phone. Bate nodded. And if we can't reach them, we escalate it properly. Will stayed in his chair, quieter now, still holding the AAC device but no longer typing. The situation outside the house suddenly felt like it was becoming just as important as what had happened inside it. Sam glanced toward Ben, keeping his voice calm but firm. Ben, let's go. Ben hesitated. Go where? Sam nodded toward the door. Back to the home, something's not right if the line down and nobody's answering. Jeffrey looked between them. We just left. Sam shook his head slightly. Yeah, but now it doesn't feel like we should have. Todd stepped forward, immediately concerned. Hold on, nobody is going anywhere alone. If something's wrong there, we handle it properly. Bate nodded in agreement. We call first, then we figure out next steps. Sam exhaled, still tense. I just don't like this, not answering, phones down, it's not normal. Will stayed quiet in his chair, watching the exchange, the AAC device resting in his hands. The focus in the room had shifted again, away from the argument earlier, and toward a growing concern about what was happening back at the home. A few days later, Ben stood outside the building, staring at it like he was in the wrong place. He dialed quickly. Tom, Jeffrey, guys, the home is now a supermarket. There was a pause on the other end. Tom's voice came back immediately, sharper with confusion. Wait, what faced on me now? Ben switched the call over. On the screen, Tom appeared, looking just as stunned. Behind Ben, the old group home building was clearly gone in function. Windows dressed differently, signage changed, people walking in and out with shopping bags instead of residents or staff. Jeffrey leaned into frame on the call, eyes wide. That can't be the same place. Ben shook his head. It is same building, just different now. Tom frowned. How does a residential home just turn into a supermarket? Jeffrey's voice dropped. Then where did everyone go? Ben didn't answer right away. He just kept looking at the doors like he was waiting for the past to explain itself. Jeffrey leaned closer to the screen, squinting. Uncle Ben double-checked the address. Ben pulled his phone away for a second, looking at it again like it might change. I've been coming to this place for 4 months now, I am at the place. Jeffrey shook his head immediately. Sorry, but this doesn't make sense. Ben's voice dropped a bit. I know. For a moment nobody spoke. Tom looked uneasy on FaceTime, glancing between them. Okay, walk me through exactly what you're seeing. Ben turned the camera slowly toward the building again, the storefront, the signage, the people going in and out with grocery carts. Jeffrey's expression tightened as he watched. That used to be the intake entrance. Tom frowned harder. Then either the facility relocated, or something was changed without anyone telling you. Ben nodded slowly, still unsettled. Nobody told me anything. Jeffrey muttered under his breath. That's the worst part. The call stayed open, but the situation only felt more confusing the longer they looked at it. Jeffrey glanced down at his phone again. I texted the group. Ben exhaled in relief. Thanks. Jeffrey typed a bit more, eyes narrowing at the screen. I texted the group home is a supermarket. A few seconds passed. Then Will's message popped up in the group chat. For real. Sam immediately followed. What? Ben stared at the screen, confused all over again. So it's not just me seeing this. Tom stayed on FaceTime, rubbing his forehead. Okay, this is either a major relocation nobody was informed about, or something is seriously wrong with the information we were given. Jeffrey typed again. I'm going to ask staff directly. Sam added. Because none of this adds up. The group chat stayed open, all of them waiting for a clear answer that wasn't coming yet. Tom's phone buzzed again. He looked at the message, and his face changed immediately. He read it out loud slowly. Staff texted, your son don't live here anymore, so you don't need to know. Jeffrey stared at the screen. That's it, that's the answer. Sam shook his head. That's not an explanation, that's a shutdown. Ben looked stunned. No notice, no transfer info, nothing. Tom's jaw tightened. I'm calling them. He immediately switched from FaceTime, dialing the number again. It rang once, then cut off. Straight to voicemail. Jeffrey leaned closer to the camera. Something's wrong here, that's not how placements work. Sam's voice dropped. Unless it wasn't processed properly, or someone changed records without telling anyone. Ben exhaled sharply. So where is everyone then? No one answered right away. The silence on the call felt heavier than anything they'd said so far. Jeffrey pointed toward the TV. On the TV. Everyone turned. The news anchor appeared on screen. Reporter, Green Todd has been shut down, residents were moved and the group home is now closed. The people who lived there have already been relocated, their families have been notified. The room went completely still. Sam sat back in his wheelchair, eyes locked on the screen. So it was shut down. Ben frowned. But nobody told us. Jeffrey looked unsettled. We just found out from a news report. Tom rubbed his forehead, staring at the TV like it might change the answer. If families were notified, why weren't we? Sam's voice came out quiet. Because we're not getting the full story. The news ticker kept moving on screen, but inside the room, everything felt paused. No one had answers yet, only confirmation that the place they knew had already been taken apart without them being properly informed. The reporter's voice came through the TV again, slightly clearer now. Reporter, a nurse said families that had your loved one isn't our top priority. If you had your loved one with you, you would be notified after reunite families. The room went quiet in a way that felt heavier than before. Jeffrey stared at the screen, disbelieving. That can't be real policy. Ben shook his head. That sounds backwards. Sam's expression tightened. That's not how safeguarding or placements are supposed to work. Tom didn't even look away from the TV. So families were basically last to know. A beat of silence. The news anchor continued on in the background, but it felt distant now. Jeffrey finally spoke again, quieter. So we were never meant to be updated in real time. Sam exhaled slowly. Or we were left out entirely. No one argued this time. The situation had shifted from confusion to something more serious and unresolved, with everyone realizing they were missing key information about what actually happened to the people who used to live there. Jeffrey's voice came through the call, smaller now. Dad, what if you and Mom need me in the group home? Tom went quiet for a moment, taking that in. He nodded slowly. I see your point. Jeffrey didn't look relieved, just uncertain. Sam leaned forward slightly. That's not something we decide based on fear. Ben added, still processing everything. We need to figure out what actually happened to the placement system first, because right now nothing about it is stable. Tom sighed. Right now nobody is going back anywhere until we get full answers, no guessing, no assumptions. Jeffrey looked down, processing that. The room, both in person and over the call, felt stuck between worry and responsibility, with no clear direction yet, just questions that still needed real answers before anyone made a decision about going back or not. Ben stepped aside and made another call, his voice tense. Yeah, Rachel, it's Ben. A pause. Then he repeated what he'd heard. They said donors pulled out. On the other end, Rachel sounded confused and concerned. Donors pulled out. Ben nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Yeah, what's the reason? Rachel was quiet for a second. Then she answered plainly. I didn't get one. Ben blinked, taken aback. You didn't get a reason at all? No, Rachel said, just a notice that funding stopped and placements were being dissolved. Ben glanced back at the others, lowering the phone slightly. Sam frowned immediately. So it wasn't just relocation, it was funding collapse. Jeffrey looked uneasy. That explains why everything got shut down so fast. Tom rubbed his forehead again, clearly overwhelmed. But nobody coordinated with families properly. Rachel's voice came back through the phone, still concerned. We only found out through system notices, not staff. The group fell quiet again as the bigger picture started forming: sudden closure, funding loss, and no clear communication to the families who depended on it. Rachel's voice softened a little through the phone. Tom is safe, that's all that matters right now. Ben nodded slowly. Are you going to see him? Rachel sighed. He's good, I'll see him after my 3-month holiday. In the background, a young man's voice called out. Mum, is Tom okay? Rachel answered calmly. He got moved. A short pause followed before the young man replied quietly. Oh, okay. Ben lowered the phone slightly after the call, looking unsettled. Sam frowned. 3 months. Jeffrey looked uncomfortable too. That sounded way too casual. Tom crossed his arms. Some families handle this stuff differently, doesn't mean they don't care, but still. Will stayed quiet nearby, listening to all of it unfold. The confusion, the sudden moves, the way some people sounded panicked while others acted like it was just another change in schedule. The whole situation still felt unstable, even with bits and pieces finally starting to make sense. Rachel lowered the phone slightly as her son, David, spoke again from the background. Do we have to go see him? Rachel answered flatly. He's still alive, so no. There was a short silence before David responded. Good. Ben pulled the phone away from his ear slowly, visibly uncomfortable with how cold the exchange sounded. Jeffrey's expression tightened. Wow. Sam sat quietly in his wheelchair, looking disturbed more than angry. Tom exhaled sharply. Okay, that's enough for tonight. Bate, who had been listening nearby, shook her head slightly. Some people really disconnect themselves emotionally from situations like this. Will looked down at his AAC device but didn't type anything. The room felt heavy again, not from confusion this time, but from hearing how differently families reacted to the same situation. David's voice came back through the phone, still sounding detached. You made the payment, right? Rachel answered immediately, like she wanted the conversation over. Stop, you're safe now. A second later she added. Now hang up Mommy's phone and get in the pool with the rest of the family. The call ended shortly after. Ben stared at his phone for a moment before lowering it completely. The silence afterward was uncomfortable. Jeffrey shook his head slowly. That sounded more like handling a bill than talking about a person. Sam looked down briefly. Some families separate themselves emotionally so they don't feel guilty. Tom sighed heavily. Or they never bonded in the first place. Bate crossed her arms, unsettled. Either way, hearing that out loud is rough. Will sat quietly nearby, absorbing all of it, the different ways people treated family, care, responsibility, and distance. No one really knew what to say after that. Will lifted his AAC device again, typing slower now but with clear focus. Tom was 3 when he first got there. Everyone looked toward the screen. Will continued. He's 19 now. A long pause. He was only home for holidays, and a staff member went with him to do Tom's care. The room went quiet again, but this silence felt different, less shock, more sadness. Jeffrey looked down. So the home basically became his whole life. Sam nodded slowly from his wheelchair. After that long, some families stopped knowing how to care for the person themselves. Bates' face tightened. Or they were never taught how. Tom leaned back in his chair, thinking hard about it. If staff handled everything for 16 years, that changes the relationship completely. Will typed one more line. Tom probably knows the staff better than his own family. Nobody argued with that. The realization sat heavily in the room that for some residents the group home wasn't temporary support anymore. It had become the center of their entire life, while family drifted further and further into the background. Ben looked over at Will carefully. How do you know all that? Will rested his hands on the AAC device for a second before typing. As nurses helped me, his nurse would pay someone to switch shifts. Everyone looked confused. Will kept going. Because everyone hated dealing with Tom's family. The words landed hard. Bate frowned immediately. That's really sad. Sam looked uncomfortable in his wheelchair. If staff were literally paying to avoid those visits, things must have been bad for years. Jeffrey shook his head slowly. Imagine growing up with staff dreading when your family shows up. Tom sighed heavily. That kind of tension affects everyone, the resident too. Will typed another short line. Tom knew. A silence followed that statement. Not because anyone doubted it, but because they all understood what it meant. If Tom had spent most of his life around staff instead of family, he probably noticed every awkward visit, every switched shift, every forced interaction long before anyone said it out loud. Will stared at the screen for a moment before typing again. Tom told them my parents paid 3 times the payment. Everyone stayed quiet, reading carefully. Will continued. He acted like it was normal. Another pause. He said, I can't pick my family, so I cannot complain, neither can you. The room fell completely silent after that. Sam looked down first. Jeffrey swallowed hard. Ben leaned back slowly, processing the weight of it. Tom's words didn't sound angry or dramatic anymore. They sounded practiced, like something he'd repeated to himself for years just to survive the situation he was in. Bates spoke softly. That's a heartbreaking way for someone that young to think. Sam nodded from his wheelchair. Sounds like he accepted things because he thought he had no choice. Jeffrey added quietly. And probably didn't want staff getting punished for his family either. Will rested his hands in his lap, looking exhausted after typing it all out. The room sat in silence again, not because anyone disagreed, but because there wasn't really a good response to hearing how normal Tom had learned to make something so emotionally distant feel. Will typed again, slower this time. Tom felt blessed because no one else could go home but him. A pause. He felt sorry for everyone else. The room stayed quiet for a moment, absorbing it. Sam spoke gently first. That sounds like survivor's guilt in a way. Jeffrey nodded slightly. Yeah, like he knew he had something others didn't. Ben frowned. But also like he didn't fully see it as freedom, more like luck. Bates' voice softened. When someone grows up in care like that, going home can stop meaning what it means for most people. Todd leaned back thinking. If staff were his main stability, then home visits probably felt like visiting another world instead of returning to one. Will didn't add anything right away. Then he typed one more line. He stopped asking for more because he thought others had less. That settled over the room heavily. No one argued because it made sense in a way that was hard to undo once you understood it. Will's hand slowed over the AAC device, then he typed carefully. They play rock, paper, scissors because everyone hated him. Tom frowned. Just the staff. Will corrected him immediately. No, the whole building. A pause. When he goes, they throw a party when he goes. The room went still again. Will's next words came out blunt, emotional, and unfiltered through the device. He is a dick. Bate immediately looked uncomfortable at the wording, but didn't interrupt. Sam sighed softly. Will, I get why you're angry, but that sounds like a lot of built-up frustration talking. Jeffrey added more carefully. Even if someone is difficult, that kind of reaction from a whole building isn't normal either. Tom looked down, processing. So it wasn't just dislike, it was like the environment turned against him. Bate nodded slightly. That's not healthy for anyone involved. A quiet settled again, less about blame now and more about realizing how toxic the situation around Tom had become for everyone in that space. Will typed again, slower and more shaken this time. Tom doesn't live in reality. A pause. Even very nice people tell him to shut up. The room went quiet immediately. Bates' expression softened, but she stayed careful with her words. Will, that sounds like something a lot of people around him have been saying for a long time. Sam nodded slightly. If he's been in that system since he was a child, he might not have had many chances to learn normal social feedback in a safe way. Jeffrey added quietly. But being shut down like that by everyone, staff, families, others, that would mess with anyone's sense of what's real. Tom looked down, clearly affected. So he either gets ignored, corrected harshly, or dismissed. Bate exhaled. That's not how communication should be taught, that's how someone gets isolated inside a system. Will didn't type anything for a moment. The room stayed still, not agreeing or disagreeing with Will's frustration, but recognizing that whatever had happened around Tom had shaped how he understood the world, whether accurately or not. Will's hand slowed on the AAC device. Even I started to avoid Tom, I'm a bad person. Bate answered quickly, firm but gentle. No. Will hesitated, then typed again. He is a lot though. A quiet beat followed. Sam spoke carefully. Avoiding someone because you're overwhelmed by them doesn't automatically make you bad. It just means your limit got hit. Jeffrey nodded slightly. It's more about how you treat someone when you are around them, not needing space from them. Tom looked down thinking. Some people take a lot of energy to be around. That doesn't make them wrong, it just means the situation around them is complicated. Bate added softly. What matters is you're thinking about it and not trying to hurt him. That already says a lot. Will stayed quiet for a moment, then kept the AAC resting in his lap. The room had shifted again, less judgment, more understanding of limits, stress, and how overwhelming situations can affect everyone differently.